Well, with me now in the studio is Nathan Stillwell, who's assisted dying campaigner at Humanists UK. Good to talk to you today. I mean, you're in favour of assisted dying. Do you hope that what's happening in the Isle of Man will be replicated across the rest of the UK?
Absolutely. I think anyone who's listened to the stories that we've seen on the news today, the stories that you've just shared, they're heartbreaking and they're absolutely barbaric that these people don't have a choice and they don't have an option. Any compassionate society should let people who are suffering have an option to choose.
But there will be those who will look at these stories like we all have and see how heartbreaking they are, but also say, for all of those people, there will also be people who are perhaps ill and who are perhaps elderly and infirm who don't want to go. And the fear is, of course, that if you change the law, it will give the power to essentially off people before they wish to leave to perhaps their family, to perhaps their friends. How can we safeguard that not happening?
We can look at the countries around the world. I mean, Switzerland's had an assisted dying law for 80 years, the US state of Oregon for 25, and Belgium and the Netherlands for 20 years. We can look at these countries, and we have looked at these countries, and that's what the report that's come out today has said essentially is these countries are safe. If there was any issues, we would have seen them. But you can't look at those people who are suffering and do nothing. That's totally the wrong way to go.
This report that is out today, what do you make of it?
I think it's a bit disappointing that it doesn't actually recommend a change in the law, which it could have done, and in my eyes, should have done. And all the people that I speak to on a daily basis who are suffering, who just want this choice at the end of their lives, they will also be immensely disappointed that it hasn't just directly recommended for change. But it does lay out some evidence and it does lay out a foundation. So hopefully at the next available opportunity, we can make a really compassionate law that is safe but gives people dignity when they are dying.
Do you think there's a difference between the willingness to discuss this in Parliament by politicians perhaps and the feeling in the rest of the country as a whole?
The British public have been supportive of assisted dying for decades. Every single opinion poll that I've seen for the past decade has been somewhere between 70 and 90%. And people want this, not just for people who are terminally ill and have 6 months left to live, but they want it for people who are incurably suffering, where there's no hope of a chance that they'll get better. And those are people like people with motor neuron disease or ALS. They may suffer for years without actually, when they've already made a choice, essentially, that when their quality of life goes below what they deem suitable, they would like the choice, and it's all about choice, to have a dignified death.
Why do you think, if public opinion is so strongly in favour of assisted dying for some, that the politicians don't seem to be willing to necessarily discuss it in the House or change the law?
I think that's the biggest question on everybody's lips now. You know, politicians are meant to be the will of the people. The people's will is clearly here. Now with this report, we say the evidence is clearly here. That's the biggest question that everyone's posing themselves now are, what are the politicians going to do about it? And they desperately, desperately need to do something about it.
If the government changes and if we get a Labour government in Parliament, do you think that it will be different?
I think both Keir Starmer and Rishi Sunak have said that they would make time for assisted dying debate, which is the thing that just hasn't happened and the thing that we desperately need. I think a new parliament might bring in younger politicians, potentially less religious politicians, and politicians who are maybe more liberal and open to it. So I think our chances when we have a new parliament will be good, and that's what I'll be campaigning for and pushing for. But essentially, I think that it doesn't matter who's in charge. This is something that desperately, desperately needs to be changed.
What difference do you think Esther Rantzen becoming involved in this campaign and the public debate about this is having?
Absolutely huge. I mean, she's done a tremendous effort. And when you look at the history of the campaign in the UK, it has always been terminally ill people or extremely unwell people who have been at the forefront of this campaign. It is people with multiple sclerosis or people with motor neuron disease that have taken the charge, that have taken the baton and said, we want change, they've demanded it. So it's incredibly inspiring. I mean, can you imagine someone with stage 4 cancer then deciding, actually, I'm going to pick up the campaign because people shouldn't have to suffer at the end of their lives?
Indeed. Nathan Stillwell from Humanists UK.